Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Keeping You Safe from Scams and Fraud, hosted by the team at Athena Care Homes and delivered by the lovely Sally and Kim on behalf of NatWest. Before Sally and Kim introduce themselves, there's just a reminder that we are recording this webinar so that we'll be uploading it to YouTube, our YouTube channel later on. So if you prefer, please turn your cameras off and please do keep your microphones muted. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. You can either come and ask them live or use the chat box if you prefer. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sally and Kim. Over to you, girls.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm just going to start by sharing the screen and then we'll talk you through why we're here and what we're here to talk to you about. So bear with me one moment. So just to give you sort of a brief background of myself and Sally, our roles and what it is that we do. So obviously pre-pandemic, we used to go out to different community groups and community halls and deliver these presentations, obviously face to face. Since then, we've been delivering them all virtually. So it's just to give you a bit of a flavour about, you know, what sort of typical fraud and scams that we're seeing more often. Obviously, we know, unfortunately, since the pandemic hit, these are becoming more and more common. You know, an awful lot of people have unfortunately fallen victim to scams. So we're just hoping to arm you with a bit of information that you can hopefully take away and share with others. And then, you know, obviously, if you have got any questions at the end, we'd be more than happy to answer anything for you. So over to you, Sally, when you're ready.
Lovely. So hopefully you can all see some stats on the screen there. And we know that the criminals don't care who they target. So anyone and everyone can be affected by scams and frauds. And I'm sure all of you have had emails and texts and phone calls over the last probably years. So 53% of victims are over the age of 55. Now, this stat has changed in the last sort of 12 to 18 months since the pandemic, and it was over the age of 65 before. So a lot more younger people are being targeted, especially over social media and sort of apps and things on their phones, and they're becoming victims of it that way. So in the UK in 2019, so a couple of years ago now, there was a £1.2 billion loss in the UK to scammed victims. Now that has risen in the last year. I think it's got up to 1.26 billion. And it's a huge amount of money. But on the next stat there, it tells you that only 5% of scams are actually reported. So you can imagine that figure is probably a lot higher because it's all that's known about. So as Kim said, what we're going to do is just give you some tips and some hints and show you the sort of thing that they're doing and how to not fall victim, and hopefully share the information with your friends and family.
Thank you. So this cycle here just gives you an idea of, you know, how the criminals work, really. So a lot of people come to us and ask us, you know, how did they get my information? Well, the honest truth is we probably would never know. A lot of it comes down to sort of data breaches and things, which we'll touch upon more later on. But basically, once your personal details have been sought by that criminal, you'll be added to a victims list. Now, that victim will obviously then try and target you. And if you are responding to the emails or the text messages, whatever it might be, and sadly do fall victim to that and do lose money, you will notice then you will get an influx of other criminals then coming to target you. And this is where the cycle works. And obviously what we want to try and do is break the cycle. Unfortunately, you know, once you have been a victim once, it's very common that you are a victim again, because as we say, we know that you are heavily targeted thereafter because your details will be sold on to other criminals. A fact that we was brought to light recently, that apparently your personal details, so things like your date of birth, address, you know, perhaps pets' names, children's names, is worth roughly about £500 to a scammer. So, you know, it's all about keeping your information safe and making sure that we don't fall into this cycle.
So we know that scams are the product of organised predatory criminals, so they are professional, it's what they do for a living, and they use what we call befriending and grooming techniques to rein their victims in. So they will always appear legitimate, helpful, friendly. They come to you mainly from purporting to be from companies that are big authorities, big organisations. It could be HMRC, could be BT, could be your bank, and they've found a problem or an issue that they want to help you sort out. So they're going to be very helpful, and use maybe your name to start with, so that you start to believe they are who they're saying they are. Unfortunately, they can change tack very quickly. They become very persuasive, persistent, and we know phone calls can change into very threatening and aggressive language. And the victim then becomes very intimidated and eventually will give away their information or their money just to get rid of the person on the other end. Sadly, think back to the cycle. Once you've then engaged with the criminal, your details are then passed on to another criminal gang or sold on, as Kim said. They go onto the dark web and buy lists of people's data and information, and then you will be targeted again by another gang until ultimately you haven't got anything left to give.
Thank you. Yeah, so these are just a few of the more common scams we saw these probably refer back to more the beginning of the pandemic, but we know there was a lot of HMRC emails, as Sally mentioned, that were floating around offering sort of tax refunds or deductions on your tax for, perhaps working from home. There's all different sorts of things that were sent out, and again, it was just, the idea behind them was there would have been some sort of link on there that they were asking you to click on to then part with your information. So we also had the World Health Organization impersonation emails, and then obviously at the beginning we had the fake cure emails. So these are all just, typical examples of what we've seen more common recently. And you'll notice at the bottom here, the Take 5 campaign. So the Take 5 campaign is a police initiative, and it basically is what it says on the tin. We've had statistics in the past where we've spoken to victims of scams who have said, the minute they put the phone down, they've realised that they've been a victim, they've realised they've compromised their information. And what this is basically saying, just take 5. If you've been asked for something that doesn't quite feel right, take a minute and just think about, what is it they're asking me for this information for? Why are they asking me for my bank details? And just sit back and take 5. There's lots of information on their website as well. So if you do want to find out more about the campaign, you can go on Take 5 on the internet, and there's loads of information, videos and other ways to keep yourself safe as well.
So we also saw lots of text messages going out, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. And here's some examples of a few that we saw. Again, some of them at the beginning, but they have continued and they just changed the wording. So the main ones are coming from big authorities, so the government, HMRC, NHS, and they were saying that on this occasion that they were going to give us all some money to battle COVID. Now, you would never, ever receive a text from the government in this vein, and they were never going to give us any money to battle COVID. Now, you'll see the blurred blue line there. Now, that's called a hyperlink. So texts and emails that have attachments and links like this are asking you to tap on them or click on the link, and they're either going to send you to a fake website. So this would have been a government website. It would have looked very real, and then it would have asked you for more details and ultimately your bank details so they could pay you. But in fact, they were going to be taking money out. Or it would download what we call malware or spyware onto the device that you're on. Now, this is software the criminals use to actually mirror your keyboard action. So they can actually then watch what you're typing in. So they can see pins, passwords. So if you're going onto your banking, for example, they'll be able to see exactly what you're typing in. You'll see the other two texts here, very similar. These were coronavirus alerts. We know that people, especially when we weren't meant to be going out and people were getting fines, these are saying that you were caught outside and you're going to be fined. Again, the fines were genuine, but they wouldn't have been in this way. Now, the latest ones, we've got the NHS ones going out asking people to click on the NHS to get vaccinations and appointments and things. Now, the NHS are actually sending out texts in this way, sadly, and there is a link for you to click on. So it's a bit difficult to tell whether it's real or not. So what we would always advise, if you're not happy, if it's something out of the blue and you weren't expecting it, always contact the company on a number or an email address or a website address that you source yourself. Don't click on the link in the text or the email if you're not sure. And just check to see if it's something you actually need to progress with. But if you're not sure, don't click on it. Take that 5 minutes, think about it. Does it feel right? Use your gut instinct, because normally that will be right.
Yeah, these are just another couple of examples of sort of impersonation scams. So we know, as we've alluded to already, that a lot of big sort of companies are the main source of the criminals, where they're coming from. So you've got your banks, even police impersonation scams. There's been an awful lot, unfortunately, going around. These ones are a little bit more scary. So you'll notice on here, this appears to be coming from the bank. So you've got at the top there that it's come from NatWest. So what this is called is what we call alpha tagging. So what the criminals can now actually do is input an ingenuine message into a genuine feed. Now, obviously, how do we tell that apart from a genuine message? Well, as we know, your bank would never ask you for PIN numbers, passwords. And again, the bank will never put a hyperlink on a text message either. So even though it looks like it's come from a genuine source, it's just about using your instincts really and thinking, what is it you're being asked to do? We know as well, a lot of these criminals are using what we call spoofing, which is where they basically can take a number from your area. So let's say, for example, in my area, the area code is 01785. So it may well come through on my mobile as a call from my area, and I will probably be more inclined to answer it. It may well be the doctors, it could be one of the kids' schools. And that's what we call spoofing. So the criminals can buy the area code for your specific area to try and engage with you and obviously make you answer the phone. So just because it looks genuine, as we say, it's very hard to tell in some circumstances, but, go with your gut. And if you're unsure, every bank has their contact number for their customer services on the back of your debit card. So if you are ever unsure, turn your debit card over, get the number and call your bank directly yourself.
So what is an impersonation scam? So as we say, it will seem like a genuine phone call, text, email. They may have some of your information. So it's, to reel you in the opening stages. But they are going to ask you to give more details and ultimately make payments. You're going to be asked to act immediately. So any email or text that sort of gives you a short time frame, even if it seems like a great investment or a great deal, which we will go into in a bit more detail for you in a bit, it should be a red flag, because nothing is that urgent. So anything that says act immediately, you've got 2 hours to do it, or you need to do it by close of business or whatever, you need to take that 5 minutes and think about it. We've also had a lot of customers that we know about that have had calls from someone purporting to be their bank's fraud department quite late at night. Sometimes the police as well, they impersonate the police, tell them that their bank account's been compromised and they need to transfer their money to what's called a safe or a secure account. Now, these do not exist. These are accounts that are controlled by the criminals. They set them up and they want you to transfer your funds over to them, and ultimately that you will lose the money. Now, they're very, very convincing, and a lot of people have transferred money over because they're worried. It's late at night, it's not time you're really thinking straight, and you're concerned that if you don't do it, that your money might all be disappearing overnight and gone in the morning. Sadly, that will be the case, but it will be because you've done it. Now, there's a difference between a scam and a fraud, and you won't always get your money back if you've actually engaged with a criminal and you've actually done the transfer, or you've given away your details that's given them access to your account. So you do need to be very careful. If you get any calls like this, especially late at night, stop the conversation, tell the criminal that you're going to call them back, or just put the phone down and then call your bank on the number on the back of your card or call 101 and speak to the police. Now, again, the criminals are very good at keeping the lines open on landlines. So if you ever get a call from your landline, call back your bank's number on a different phone if you have one. So use a mobile. If you haven't got a different line, you can either wait 15, 20 minutes to make sure the line's cleared, but that's very difficult when you're worried that your bank account may be compromised. What we would suggest is you phone a family member or a friend that you know the voice of, so that you know that that line is clear and you're speaking to someone you know. Then call the bank or the police or whoever it is that you need to call, because you need to make sure that you're not going straight back to the criminals. If they leave that line open, unfortunately, you will go straight back to them, and then they will obviously tell you what you need to do, and it's not what you want to hear.
Okay, so inevitably, what do they want? Well, obviously they want to get their hands on your money, but obviously they get that by obtaining your personal information. So I always kind of use the analogy of you know, your information as being the keys to your front door. You know, you wouldn't, you know, we're all very conscious when we leave the house to make sure the doors are locked, the windows are locked. And if you're walking down the street and a stranger says, "Can I have your house keys?" you're certainly not going to pass that stranger the keys to your house with all your worldly possessions in. And that's almost the same way which we need to see our information. You know, our information, if it falls into the wrong person's hands, you know, can, as we say, you know, clear your bank account out. And as Sally mentioned, sadly, we see far too often where if you have engaged with that criminal and, as we've said, moved the money perhaps to a safe account, or you know, divulged your card number, you know, it's a very grey area. Each case is looked at individually. However, it's certainly not a case of, if you've lost money to a scam, that you will be reimbursed by the bank, because inevitably, as we said at the start, only 5% of these crimes are reported, and very, very often the criminals unfortunately get away with it, and so there is no money to be retrieved. So, as we say, it is a grey area, but you know, if you have divulged information or you are concerned, call us. The quicker we know about it, the quicker we can, you know, go about cancelling your cards and getting new cards set up for you as well.
So what they're going to do with this data once they've got hold of it, so they've got some information about you, so they can either impersonate you or they can contact you directly, as we've said, impersonating someone else. Now, when they impersonate you, they will then go and open some sort of credit agreement, loan, a credit card, and obviously do some damage. They may even contact your bank pretending to be you. There are lots of ways that you're protected, especially with your bank account. But I have actually had my data stolen. I had my data stolen last year. And Christmas week, I received a letter from a catalogue company saying that I'd opened a new account, £5,000 limit for me to spend, and my blender that I'd ordered was on its way. I knew nothing about this. I did contact the company. It's a well-known scam with catalogues. So what they do is they obviously stole my data, opened the account. They order a nominal valued product, get that sent out, and then they will phone up and change the dispatch address for any future products. But the account address and name stays the same. So I'd get the bill and they'd get the high-end products that they then start ordering. I did manage to cancel it. The company were very quick on cancelling that for me. But you can imagine Christmas week, I may not have even opened that post. I might have thought it was rubbish and binned it. I may not have received it till in the new year. So a lot of damage could have been done, and I could have ended up with you know, damage on my credit history and a huge bill to try and sort out. So you do need to be very aware, especially around different times of the year. HMRC fraud definitely is sort of January to April when everyone's doing their tax returns. Christmas, big time for the criminals because everyone's busy doing other things. So you do have to look at the opportunity that they're using. Pandemic's been a great one. We've had lots of Royal Mail ones, delivery company ones, because people are at home, more packages going out. So the criminals have jumped on that too. So they're opportunists, and they will use any opportunity, any disaster to actually, you know, build up their different ways of sending out scam in messages to people on email or mail.
Yes, just to quickly cover off sort of impersonation scams. So just obviously making sure you know who you're really talking to. As we said, we'd never ask you for PINs, passwords, passcodes, anything like that. Safe accounts don't exist, so the bank or the police would never ask you to move your money. We've had instances in the past as well where customers have been told that the bank's been compromised, a member of staff is involved in a scam. You know, you mustn't tell the members of staff. And these criminals now can, you know, they know the sort of questions that we ask, and they can prompt you ready for your entrance to the bank so that you know exactly what you're going to be asked and you know what answers to provide. So, you know, it's just about really making sure that you take that time to think about things. We've covered off a bit about BT. They had a big data breach as well, but we've there was one in every 3 people, I think it is, actually are with BT. So quite often they will be used as by the criminals as a company name. So it might be that they've called you saying that you've got problems with your internet, and they want remote access to be able to fix that issue with your computer. Now, going back to the start where Sally mentioned about the malware that can be put onto your device, that's basically what they're looking to do. So you know, the fact that they're calling and it may well be your provider, they should never be calling out the blue, and certainly not asking for remote access to any of your devices. So, you know, verify the number using a Google search, or, you know, the number off the back of your card. And if you do think something's happened, you may well have given your information away, contact us as soon as possible so we can try and put it right.
So we're now going to touch on a couple of other types of scams that reared their head quite significantly, and one is investment scams. So these are basically scams where they try and get you to invest in a scheme or shares or a commodity, and they either don't exist or they're not worth the money you're being asked to pay for them. So they will just come to you with a great deal just for you. Get rich quick schemes, don't miss out. Obviously, all those time restrictions again. So now the act immediately that we were talking about. So they should all be red flags. If you do want to invest money, you should do your own homework, and you shouldn't rely on an out of the blue contact, either an email or a text or a phone call.
So just to give you a brief overview of the different types of investment scams, we know at the moment sort of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is a huge problem. Unfortunately, they aren't regulated in the same way that you know, banks are regulated. So if you are looking to invest in you know, sort of cryptocurrency, again, you know, do your own homework. Online trading as well can be a huge problem. So especially with the youngsters, a lot of youngsters are being targeted through social media, through, you know, Instagram, TikTok, offering them, you know, high returns for small amounts, or asking if their accounts can be used for sort of, obviously they don't know this, but for money laundering purposes. So, you know, the online investments is a big problem, and it is only going to get worse. So it's just about, as we say, as Sally said, if you are looking to invest, make sure you do your homework and you know who you're investing with. You know, on the FCA website as well, you can actually type in on there and it will give you a list of all investors, and you can put the name of the company that you're looking to invest with and ensure that it is a genuine company as well.
So how are they targeting people? So it's not just savvy investors. It is anyone who basically will engage with them on an email or a text or a call. So they do their homework. So they will look at things like data that's been stolen from hacked websites. So we know places like British Airways, Currys, BC World, even TSB Bank have had their data breached. Now, British Airways got fined £20 million last year for 400,000 pieces of personal and financial data they held. So you can see that's probably where my data came from, but you'll never know where they've actually got the information from. But we give data away all the time. We all do lots of market research things, all sorts of quizzes on social media. If any of you are on Facebook, there's always quizzes on Facebook asking you to put in details to find out all sorts of silly names and things. But actually, all the information you're giving away is things that you may use for passwords. So it'd be like favourite holiday destination, pets' names, dates, and all sorts of things that you think is innocent information, but actually the criminal just used it to build up the profile. So be very careful on social media. Make sure that your settings are always on private, and that you don't give any information away to anybody other than your friends and family and people you want to see the information.
Yeah, so this is obviously just explaining what they do with your data. It's very similar to the, you know, to before. So it's just the ways in which they contact you. So it could be, you know, fake reviews. A lot of companies have, you know, lists of people who they'll just ask to go on and leave reviews to make it look more of a genuine source. You know, the fact that you've got the time constraints. So it might be, you know, we'll offer you this amazing interest rate if you take it out today. You know, but it's always people obviously claiming to be trustworthy companies. It may well even be a company that you know and they've been impersonated. So, you know, it's just about, you know, if it's too good to be true, going back to, you know, the typical, what we always used to say, if it's too good to be true, it more than likely is.
So in summary then, how do you protect yourselves from investment scams? So if you want to do investments, please do your own homework. So where did you learn about it? What checks have you done? And have you had a look on the Financial Conduct Authority's webpage? Check out those companies. Make sure that you seek independent financial advice. And if you get any emails, even if it's from somebody you've used before, make sure it's a genuine email address that's come over. I had a customer who always used the same broker recently, had an email in just in the last couple of months offering him a new investment, £20,000, and it was a 1.5% deal. Now, it doesn't sound a lot, but actually, if you know what the bank rates are at the moment, that's quite a good rate. So he promptly sent them the £20,000, didn't get a receipt from them. When he looked into it, it turned out that the email address that came over, they'd changed an I for a 1, and he didn't notice. So he'd sent £20,000 to someone he didn't know. And unfortunately, it's very unlikely we're going to get it back. So you do need to be very careful, even if you are a savvy investor.
Yeah, so we're going to touch upon now romance scams or friendship scams. So I think these are probably the worst type of scam because not only is it financial impact, you've obviously got the emotional impact as well. So this could be an out of the blue message on, you know, Facebook, something, and obviously what they'll do is try and gain your trust. A lot of these types of scams, they will have done an awful lot of homework on you. It may well be that, you know, they know that you've recently divorced, or they know you're at home alone. So they'll have similar circumstances to, again, further gain your trust and have something in common with them. So they don't always start by asking for money. It tends to come quite further down the line. Romance scams tend to go on, well, they can go on, you know, months, years, in fact. But obviously they do play up their emotions. So as I say, these are one of the worst types of scams, but unfortunately the most common type of scam that we've definitely seen in the last 12 months.
So how do they work then? So they will use legitimate sites, not always dating sites. It might just be a friendship site, may even be a club that you're a member of, and you get a new friend that arrives and suddenly wants to start chatting to you. They're going to have researched you, but they're going to ask you lots and lots of questions. So they want some more personal details from you. And they will ask you ultimately to chat away from the website that you've got the security on. So they're going to ask you to either text or use a web chat type facility or WhatsApp type thing, and that should be a red flag. Ultimately, they're after your money. So if it's a friendship, you're going to have built up their relationship, that trust with them, and they may then come up with an example of when they know they're short some cash and you want to help them because you're their friend, or they're going to say they're in love with you if it's that sort of relationship that you built up. Now, you've all probably got relatives or friends that have been isolated during COVID, and you've been checking in with them once a week. Now, a lot more people are using the online systems. So if anyone ever mentions a new friend that they've got, find out where that person's come from. You know, have they actually met them? Where did they meet them? Have they did they get approached first? Because that's usually how the romance and friendship scams start.
Yeah, so obviously once they've gained your trust, obviously they do come to you for money, and there is some good sob stories out there. It could well be that they're you know, over fighting a war for the country and they need to get back, or they've got a family member who needs support. Believe it, we've heard everything. Now, obviously, what they tend to start doing as well is they'll ask for small amounts to begin with. So it may well be, you know, £10–20, and quite often they'll actually refund this money as well, just to further gain your trust. And then obviously the amounts start adding up and adding up. They'll pay you back when they're due, you know, wages, or they've got an investment that's coming. Unfortunately, this is never the case. You know, once you've parted with that cash, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to get it back.
So how do we spot them? As I said, make sure that if anybody ever mentions a new person in their life, that you ask the question. But they will always contact their victim first. They ask lots of questions, use attractive profile pictures, may have poor grammar and spelling. It may not be that they're from the UK and English is their first language. They will change their story over time. So that should be a red flag too if they start to match everything you do. And they will refuse to do any video call or meet you in person. When I was doing face-to-face presentations of this kind, I was in a care home and there was an 80-year-old gentleman around the table, and he got his mobile phone out at this point to show me a picture of his new girlfriend. Now, she was clearly in her 20s, blonde, turns out she was somewhere like Sweden. They'd been chatting for 18 months and nobody had knew anything about it. And he was convinced that he was in love with her and she was going to come over to the UK and meet with him. But she didn't have any money for the flight, surprisingly. So he was about to send her money to help her get over. We did manage to do what's called a reverse image search on Google, and you can find out where photographs are being used from. And she was actually from a catalogue. It did help me to try and convince him that she wasn't who he thought she was. But it's very difficult when someone's heart is ruling their head and their emotions are very much in the relationship. And these people are so convincing. I know Kim's had a customer where in the end she didn't worry about the money. She was more worried that she'd now lost the love of her life and this man was going to be not in her life anymore, even though he actually was never really there in the first place.
Yeah, there's some awful examples. I know you're probably going to share your other example in a moment, Sally, but yeah, that was just another case that we had, whereas she'd sent him thousands and thousands. They'd booked to go on an all around the world trip. Their first stop on the trip, they were going to stay in the vineyards in South France. She'd even booked the flights, everything, and realised that obviously it was all a big scam. Family members got involved. It was horrific. And as I say, she didn't care one bit about the money. It was all about the emotional support that she'd had. She'd actually asked me if she could carry on speaking to him, even though he'd taken thousands and thousands from her. So as we said at the beginning, it's an awful type of scam because these can go on for a long, long period of time. And as we know, COVID's had a huge impact, especially, people have been more vulnerable due to isolation. So, yeah, it's an awful type of scam, but it's about watching out for others as well. So, talk to someone you trust about what's happening and, look out for those warning signs. Again, going back to the Take 5 campaign, so just take it slow if it seems a bit off, trust your instincts. It goes without saying, but, don't send money to someone you've never met in person. And unfortunately, once you've realised it is a scam, you need to stop all communications. Going back to the beginning where we said the techniques can soon become quite nasty, and they certainly do. You will be bombarded by more criminals because they'll be, trying to fight the cause as well. And, it can be quite nasty and get quite personal. So, if you are concerned, get in touch with the bank or, call the police. That's what they're there for as well, to support.
So yeah, just to give you the other story, so we had a lady who was a divorcee. She was in her 50s, which is actually the main category of people who are caught out in romance scams. She befriended a man on a friendship site for several months, and then he knew everything about her. She told him everything, and she decided to sell her house. He was a financial advisor, said, "Don't worry, I'll help you with that." He said, "I'll draw up the paperwork. Don't worry about solicitor. I've got a great one you could use." He got the paperwork sent to her. They never actually met in person. He just put crosses where she should sign. So she signed all the paperwork, sent it out. The house did get sold. She was, over the moon, couldn't wait for the money to come through so she could move on in her life. But she never got the money on the sale date. When she phoned the solicitors, it turned out that she'd actually signed the house over to this man and not the paperwork she thought she'd signed. He took the proceeds, he sold the house, and he did sell it to an investment company. And now this lady is a tenant in her own house because she hasn't told her family that she's lost her family home. So she's paying rent to the investment company just so that she can save face. And she's so embarrassed. And she's actually lost all confidence in even people, and trust in people. And it's amazing how much this man went to lengths to actually do her out of her own property. But you'll see on the screen there's lots of places you can go for help. All the banks have their own security centre. That's the NatWest one. And there's lots of information on there to help you. Friends Against Scams, you'll see behind me, I've got a Friends Against Scams banner up. They are trading standards and they've got a great website, lots of up-to-date scam information, and you can become an ambassador and take a little sort of 10-15 minute training program to give you lots more information to help you spread the word. But as we said, if you think you've been a victim, please contact your bank in the first instance. The quicker we get involved, the quicker we can try and get any funds back that may have disappeared. Action fraud, I know that they are actually disappearing, but action fraud is part of the police as well. And that's where the 5% of scams have been recorded. They're not getting enough information for the police to actually act on. So the more we do report, the better. And please to think about talking about somebody to somebody and not feeling embarrassed, because it's such a common type of crime at the moment, and the more we can get people to talk about it, the more people we can save in the future. I have got all of this on an email and I will send it out to you so that you can share it, and there's lots more places as well on the email to go with links and some top tips and hints, so I'll send that out to you later afterwards so you can share it out. I think that's probably Enough information.
That's it. There was just some top tips, but we've pretty much covered everything anyway. So it's just, about staying safe, don't clicking on links, don't ever allow anyone remote access to your device. Obviously watching out for grammar and hovering your mouse over the email address as well is also helpful, because you'll be able to see the actual destination where the emails come from. And just to take 5, if we can, anything that sticks in your mind from what we've discussed today, it will be to take that away. Trust your gut, and if you're concerned, please talk to a family member or a friend, or come to us, and we are here to support you if you need some help. So I will stop sharing my screen now and come back to you, and obviously if you've got any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Hopefully we haven't scared you all to death.
I know, it's a bit like Crime Watch, isn't it? At the end, everyone goes really quiet.
Thanks, guys. That was so interesting. I think for me, the key bit that I learned today was around banks not sending hyperlinks in text messages.
They will send, you may find that they will send you one about marketing. So it might say, this is our new range of products or whatever, but they would never ask you to click on it to go into your own banking. So if you get anything like that, that's what you need to be aware of. Yeah,
I think that's a really, really incredible bit of advice, but so simple, isn't it? It's not something you necessarily think about.
Yeah. I mean, there's loads of different types of scams, and we could go on forever. I mean, when we used to go out and about, we'd talk about doorstep scams, more about telephone scams, especially the elderly, and how to, stop calls coming in, call barring systems and things. There are hundreds of different types of scams. I mean, we were focusing more on sort of during the COVID and what people have been experiencing during lockdown. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions about any types of scams, we will do more, we do our best to answer them. We work very closely with the police and trading standards, so we've got lots of experience, and part of our job as well as doing these presentations is, as Kim said, we look after our vulnerable customers, so we deal with cases on a day-to-day basis, and at the moment I think we're getting something like 50 or 60 cases a week minimum per team, and there's 8 teams in our company just with these types of things. That's without any other types of cases that we deal with vulnerable people, because it's not all about scams. Clearly there's other things that people need to support with, but it's shocking.
Okay, I've had a question come through the chat. Should we just forward suspect texts to the bank number, or should we report them to our phone network as well?
You should really each company that you get them from, so say it came from BT or it came from your bank or it came from HMRC, each company will have a reportable text number that you can send it to. So it's best to send it to the company that it's meant to purporting to be from, because then they can have a look at the number and have a look at where it's come from, and then block it on your device. The trouble with scammers is they just change the number by 1 digit and come in again. But the more you block and the more that you break that cycle, because, time's money to the criminals. So if you don't engage with them, eventually they give up on you because they think you're not worth the time and money, and they will eventually give up. So you will end up stop getting the calls and things, but it will take a long time. Don't expect it to happen overnight, because it won't.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, if you are being sort of bombarded with telephone calls to landline, you've obviously got the telephone preference service, which is completely free. You can register your landline number with the TPS, and that stops a percentage of calls coming through. But also the likes of Citizen Advice, they quite often offer free call blockers as well. So the call blockers are a device that can be added to your telephone, and that will basically just stop those nuisance calls coming through. BT have got their own one, BT Guardian, where you may well have experienced this yourself, where you call through to someone and you've had to announce who you are before they have to pick the phone up. All these types of things are a great way, to obviously stop the criminals coming after you, because they're not going to bother sitting waiting for you to pick the phone up. They'll know as soon as they got through to that, hang up, try the next number. So they're all good things to have on landlines, and obviously on your mobiles. Every mobile, whatever mobile number you've got, you can block numbers. So if you just click on it, click on there's normally an option, if you click on the options, that you can block that number. And as Sally said, the more you block, you know, eventually they'll get bored and they'll move on to the next victim. So it's just about, you know, making it as difficult as we possibly can for them to, you know, get through to you and, you know, inevitably get hold of your hard-earned cash.
Okay. I've had another one come through. You said at the beginning, if you scammed once, you get added to a list and then you're likely to be scammed again, or they're likely to try. I mean, do you know how likely that is? How often you see
Very
that?
likely, unfortunately.
That was a solid answer.
If you've engaged, then
Okay.
Sorry, Kim, you were going to say.
A few years ago, I went to a police conference, and it was all about looking at the dark web. Now, it's one of them terms that we hear of. We know that this thing exists, no idea what it is. Anyway, we had a presentation about the dark web and what it actually looks like. And they took us onto this page, and there was lists and lists of numbers, probably 500 numbers. And then it would say next to it, what, like, already been scammed, lost this amount of money. There was card numbers, expiry dates, you name it, everything. I couldn't believe it. I was horrified. Obviously, there was lists of numbers where they had card numbers. Now, there were probably, 1,000 card numbers, along with the expiry dates and 3 numbers on the back of your card. And they'd be selling them for probably £500. Now, the likelihood that most of them cards would more than likely have already been cancelled. It doesn't matter, because they've got a 1 in 500 chance, you know, so for their criminals, it's worth it. But as we said, once you've engaged with that criminal, or you've been susceptible to a scam, your data then becomes worth more. So you'll be then put back into the system, and you'll almost have a flag against you. And as I say, when I saw it, it was very eye-opening and quite shocking. But it was a comment a few years ago. But you wouldn't believe the information that's on there. But as I say, it's a very scary world, the internet sometimes. And I think we quite often get asked, you know, but how have they got this? And as I say, realistically, we'll probably never know. But all we can say is, you know, unfortunately, and it might not even be that you've actually fallen victim to that scam, but it might be that you've picked up the phone and had a conversation with someone, so they know that you're likely to actually engage with them again. And that's kind of, you know, there was different categories for different types of you know, responses. So, and as I say, unfortunately, it's very sad, but that's the world we live in. So when you say how likely is it, unfortunately, extremely likely. Hopefully you can have enough knowledge to, you know, yourself not be susceptible to it again. However, you will be heavily targeted for a second time, I would imagine.
They call them suckers lists, sadly. And they sell the details, so they may pay something like 80p for a credit card number and £1.50 for the credit card number with a number on the back, and then it accumulates, and they just spend. And as Kim said, I think it's between £500 and £800 they will spend per victim, because they want to make a lot more money out of it. So the more information they have, the better. But it's quite shocking, really, how it works. So we're not going to stop them doing it. What we need to do is stop people falling victim by breaking the cycle and not giving away the information. That's where the sort of angle that we're trying to come in at. It's, you know, because these people will continue, and they will just come up with a new type of scam there's new ones out all the time, isn't there? So it's just about being aware, and it's a sad world that you can't trust people now in that vein. But if you've got that little bit of knowledge and you take that 5 minutes, sometimes it will just mean that you won't lose money.
Yeah, and just a very, very quickly last to just touch upon as well, we mentioned very briefly about the Royal Mail scam. Now, my mum's actually had this recently. She said, "Oh, Kim, I've had a letter through my door." She's always ordering things, so it's very, very likely that it's probably something that she's missed. The way in which these types of scams work is there'll be a contact number on there, and that contact number is a premium rate number. So you, just by dialing that number, you probably charge about £80 to actually contact that number, and obviously it isn't legitimate.
It's about £10 a minute, isn't it? Normally the line.
So obviously, if you are expecting delivery, you know, a lot of places now will send you their own tracking information, or you can contact Royal Mail or pop into your local post office and see if they can track it on your behalf. But with these calling cards, just be very conscious that they're massively doing the rounds. And as they were, when my mum mentioned it to me the other night, and I thought, Mother, you know, I thought let's explain how this one works. But as I say, they're very common at the moment. So again, just be very careful if you are ordering things. You know, make sure you check yourself on the tracking, and don't be calling the numbers off there, because they can soon hit you with a massive bill, unfortunately.
It almost makes you a little bit scared to click on anything or ring anyone, doesn't it?
It's sad, isn't it, really?
This kind of information. But that kind of covers the next question I had, which was obviously most of this was covered the digital scams. And James was asking, is there anything we should be aware of that might come through the post? And that kind of ticks that.
The postal ones normally are sort of the ones, the competition things that come through. Also flyers that give you a product and then it says if you buy this you get 2 free of this or whatever, and people tend to sign up for those and they don't read the small print, and then they get charged $89.99 per month for tiny little products that come through the door. Unfortunately, they are a type of scam, but they're things that trading standards would deal with because it's more about value for money and product related. But the other types of postal ones are impersonation ones, catalogues like the one I had studio catalogue. I'm still waiting for my blender. That was a year ago.
Obviously you've got the original ones where you've got family members abroad
inherited. My uncle in Africa has died and I've inherited $1 million, but I've got to send £300 to release it and pay the admin fee and stuff like that. You still get those.
I think postal ones they're not as common because there's more work involved for the criminal, and realistically they don't need to do it because all they need to do is hack into your device and there you go, they've got everything they need. So the postal one's a good one because they're quick fixes. If they can get someone to deliver postal cards in your area and one person calls them, there you go, they've got themselves 50 quid just by a phone call.
It's easy money.
It's all about convenience and time that the criminals are willing to spend, and I think realistically the online, unfortunately, is the most common type and the most common way that you're going to be
or the phone calls,
giving information.
Phone calls. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. So my husband's got 2 motorbikes and he had both of them come up for their road tax at the same time. This was a few months ago, and so we got the DVLA, the notifications you get, went online, DVLA, paid his road tax for both bikes. Within 10 minutes, he had an email from DVLA telling him he'd overpaid, he was due a refund and a discount. Put your details in and we'll put it back in your bank. So he did. Barclays, I hasten to add. And he then had on his Barclays app a pinging saying money was going out of his account, not coming in. So he quickly phoned Barclays and said, I think I've been a victim of a scam. You'll never guess what my wife does for a living. And he's a police officer. So it just shows you anyone can be, and he's probably listening now. Oh, she's telling that story again. But it's about highlighting that actually it's not stupid people that are falling for it, and anyone can be in that moment and you're not thinking straight about actually, does this feel right? Because gut instinct actually is a great thing, but it's normally too late. You press that button and then you think, I shouldn't have pressed that. Something like 1 in 4 people realise the minute they press the button they shouldn't have done. So
I think there's we all talk about. I mean, we've been a victim of this scam. I remember my partner was he's always worked from home. He went to Starbucks and connected to their Wi-Fi. Now, obviously, again, another thing just to bear in mind, if you're connecting to public Wi-Fi, if you've got someone in the corner of that room who is a criminal, they could well easily be accessing everything that you've got on your device. Sadly, went onto his bank account while he was in there. A couple of days later, he was very kindly paying half towards my new car. So we went in to go and draw the money out, and they said, unfortunately, there is no money in your account. And we said, what on earth do you mean? It's all been taken out by Jesus. That was what we were told, honestly. I was literally stood there in tears crying, and it came about. It was because when he was in Starbucks 2 days prior, someone had hacked into his laptop and gotten his bank details and wiped him out. So, unfortunately, it happens to us all. It's about learning from it and trying to explain to others how to go about keeping yourself safe and stop these people from, as we say, taking, our money. And, unfortunately, the worst thing is they don't get caught. So it's, we need to do our very best as we can to, keep our information safe and secure as we can.
Prevention is better than cure, they say, don't they, sometimes?
One of our attendees has just shared something with me. My husband used to get posts saying that he'd won money but had to send money to get it back. He spent a fortune. She ended up tearing the paper up and sending it back without a stamp, and eventually it stopped.
Unfortunately, that is a very common one, so I'm sorry to hear that. And that is actually, without stopping that correspondence with them is the only way, because they will give up because you're not, returning it. But we've had lots of customers that have, we've found their accounts have suddenly gone drained right down because they've been conned into all sorts of lottery schemes. And I had one customer who was paying into every country's lottery in the whole world, and they were all scams and all fakes, but he was very vulnerable and thought he was going to win millions. And it's awful.
Gosh. Does anyone have any questions for Sally and Kim? If you want to unmute or use the chat box.
I've sent you the list of links over, Lisa, so you can send those out to everyone as well.
That's perfect.
But if anybody's got any other groups of people that you think this would benefit, then please shout, because we're happy to give this talk to whoever will listen, really, because the more information we get out there, the better.
Absolutely. And I think I'm certainly happy to host these again with you guys, because it's so important, and we can reach more people with these messages and hopefully stop some other people being kind of heartbroken and destitute, because it must put people in such a terrible position. Sandra, have you got a question for us?
Yeah, if there's still time. I had my mobile phone. I got a number.
Oh my gosh, they're ringing you now.
Ignore that.
Timing.
My mobile phone. I keep getting very similar numbers. They ring once and then they hang up. And the first time I did it, I rang back and there was nobody there, and it was obviously a premium rate number. But luckily, my system clicked in and sort of cancelled the call. But I keep getting more and more numbers, and they're always different. So there's no point in blocking them.
You should block them. Do block them.
Yeah. Okay.
And don't ring them back. And if you don't answer them, because if you don't know who it is, it's your phone, don't answer.
They ring off before you get a chance. They really only ring twice.
You might find that then eventually they will start waiting for you to answer. But the criminals also use the fact that the minute you say hello, they know you're female. They can basically gauge roughly how old you are. They can know you're going to answer, as Kim said. Then they're going to say, "Oh, this person actually will answer." And then it will escalate. So any number you don't recognise, just ignore. And
I used to get an awful lot of 020 numbers, so it'd be like 0207, 0208, and I think that's a London number.
That was me. You're blocking. Thanks.
Yeah, if you're not expecting it, I would just say, let it go through to voicemail. And obviously, if they don't leave you a voicemail, block it, because it's obviously someone you don't need to speak to.
I don't know about other mobile phones, but certainly on the iPhone, you can block all unrecognisable incoming calls.
Yeah.
So anything you haven't got stored in your address book, you can block, and then they can leave a voicemail. You can judge then if it's important enough to call back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we find with the elderly, unfortunately, things like doctors and hospitals and stuff, they're normally not recognised numbers, and people are worried about not receiving calls that they need to, hear. But again, an answer phone is the best way to do it. Let it click to answer phone. If you know the voice, pick it up. If you don't, ignore it. And the scammers aren't going to leave you nice little messages, so they're not going to waste their time.
No.
Yeah. Sarah has just asked if it's possible to have your contact details, because their mother's union or church might be interested in having a talk as well. So that's
no problem at all. Lisa, you can pass them on. We're happy to do that.
Yeah.
We are still only doing virtual. We can't do any face-to-face, sadly. So as long as they've got facilities to do, a Zoom or a Teams or whatever it may be, we're happy to come out and do that.
Perfect. All right. Email address shared.
Fabulous.
Super. Any other questions, guys, or experiences you want to share? For me, I think hearing other people's experiences is just as important as being able to ask questions, because you can kind of put yourself in that situation and think, oh, okay, I've never considered it like that, or it's really interesting to find out how someone else has dealt with something. But if nobody's got any other questions,
It'll have to be a home visit, and I don't really
Well, thank you for hosting today, and thank you for having us. Hopefully you've all taken at least one little nugget of information away, and as we say, pass on the word, spread the word with your friends and family, and if you want us to come and do any further talks, then please let us know.
Yeah, no, a massive thank you to you guys. It's been really helpful. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks
Nice
for
to
having
meet
us.
you all. Stay safe.
Thanks everyone. Have a
Bye.
great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.